Welcome to Hockey Night in New York, where Islanders hockey always reigns supreme. Whether you were raised at the barn in Uniondale or born in the stable at Belmont, Hockey Night in New York is your home for all things Isles. Now, let's drop the puck and get this party started.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is Hockey Night in New York. Welcome to the program, everyone. It is Sunday, April 23rd, 2023. Coming at you live from Floored Media in Rockville Center. Got a big fun one coming up for you tonight. Islanders former head coach Peter Laviolette and Stanley Cup winner will be joining us. Extremely excited about that. Really appreciate him giving us some of his time tonight. Joining me tonight is Mr. Chris Botta. My name is Sean Cuthbert. Chris Botta, how we doing?
I'm doing great, Sean. How are you?
I'm doing all right. You know, it's been a few hours, so I've been able to, wipe the tears away a little bit.
The timing works out well, right?
Yeah, I think it was a nice buffer between the disappointing loss today and starting things up. So obviously the mood is a little less exciting than it might have been had they pulled out the win. But listen, the series isn't over. It's 3-1. We're going to keep talking about it. But before we do, I want to remind everybody that we are proud to be presented by Blue Line Deli and Bagels, located at 719 West Jericho Turnpike in Huntington, 217 Carlton Avenue in East Islip, and of course, UBS Arena at Belmont Park. Also proud to be sponsored by Lost Farmer Brewing Company, located at 63A 2nd Street in Mineola, and proud to be sponsored by Main Street Board Game Cafe, located at 307 Main Street in Huntington Village. So
more on that later. You always say more on that later, and you didn't.
I switched it up this time because I figured by now they know it's coming later, right? Trying to save some time, Chris.
Absolutely.
You just blew it. You blew it all.
We're going to need it.
Yes, indeed.
So what do you think? I mean, where do you think the series stands right now? We know it's 3-1. Do you think it is over? Do you have reason for hope? You are in the barn these last two games. Tell me how you feel, Sean.
I was there, and obviously anybody who watches is a little discouraged with the way that the game went. Mm-hmm. Look, backs are against the wall, 3-1. The odds are not in their favor, that's for sure. And I'm not going to sit here and tell anybody that they're going to do it. No problem. They're going to come back, win 3 in a row. Can they? Sure. They've shown enough in this series that they've certainly been able to hang with the Carolina Hurricanes. Can they do that 3 times in a row? Sure, it's possible. I'm certainly not putting any money on it. But look, it's not over. We're going to see what this team is made of if they can go into Carolina on Tuesday and extend this series and then take it one game at a time, right? But look, we're going to cover everything that's been happening in the series. We haven't talked about it since it started, but obviously discipline is going to be one of the biggest things. And now I know everybody has their gripes about the way these games have been called. I have my own. We'll talk about them. But I think the most important thing this team has to do is stay out of the penalty box.
They sure do. The thing about playoff series is that so much of it is about eliminating the noise and being ready for the next shift, as corny as that might sound. We're just hearing a lot about the refs. Look, they got screwed on the non-call on the Mayfield high stick in the overtime. That's a singular moment, and the refs made a mistake, despite what Mike Rupp thought. Nice, right. Nice of Rupper to somehow feel like he had to weigh in. He works for the NHL Network. So that aside, these things in game, you have to put them aside. And you have to navigate the media. You have to navigate the noise, the social media posts, the officiating, everything that comes with it. And I thought today, Sunday, the Islanders did a really bad job of persevering. That one goal, Zach Parise said it very well after the game. That one goal is one goal, and that doesn't excuse the rest of it. So, listen, when it comes to this team, nothing has come easy this season. Right?
No, that's true.
There have been a couple little weeks, maybe twice during the season, where they were firing on all cylinders and had everybody happy. But it's a team that needed the last day of the season, right? Their last game to make the playoffs. So it's not a shock that we are where we are right now. The last thing I'll say for now about this series is I thought after they won on Friday, it just felt too jubilant. Again, navigating a series, managing a series, just from the reaction of the team, not across the board, but there seemed to be like an exhale, like now we're back in it. Well, no, it's not a series until it's tied. And I thought that I was a little disappointed in that. Like I feel like there's a lack of leadership, perhaps from the head coach, from the coaching staff. But boy, like today, that was It was just bad, and they have nobody. There's little things they could blame, but they have nobody to blame but themselves. It was a really piss-poor performance on Sunday.
Yeah, like you said, Parisi hit it on the head, right? Because you can complain all you want about that call. And look, I thought it was a ticky-tacky call. I'm sure most of the people watching and listening to the show do too. You know, he gets pushed into the goalkeeper. And, you know, they came out flying to start the game. They had all the momentum. They were playing very well. I think they were up 5 shots on goal to none before the penalty happened. So everything was looking really good. That penalty happens, and then another, you know, unfortunate domino effect where they get the additional penalty there, and they end up with the 5-on-3, and that, you know, takes the wind out of their sails. They're down 1-0, but there's still, like, you know, 50 minutes left in the hockey game, and you got to be able to persevere over that and turn it around. And unfortunately, we saw for the remainder of the game, they weren't able to do that. In fact, the wheels came off a little bit. You know, Matt Martin takes an undisciplined penalty to end the period. That ends up putting them down 2-0 to start in the second period, and then it just kind of, you know, kept rolling from there. And you know, listen, when you're in the fourth game of this series, you have a pretty decent idea how the game is going to be called, and they haven't been able to get away with much, right? I mean, they're pretty much calling everything that they seem to see anyway, right? So you gotta think, you know, take all that into account, and you got to be able to restrain yourself. Now, obviously, adrenaline's high, emotions are high. It's easy for me to say this from this chair right here, but these guys have been in it. They've been through it. They've done it. And, you know, you look at the effort today, and they could have gotten out of their own way if they just managed to manage their game a little bit better.
The most disappointing aspect of Sunday's game was the Jarvis goal early in the third period. They're down 3-0, and I understand the odds are stacked against them.
Right.
But I actually kept on replaying it, which I don't do often, because as Jarvis is coming in on the breakaway, the Islander closest to him is Brock Nelson. And I understand that you have to pinch a little more and you need to step it up. But if you look at the Islanders of these last 5 seasons, Trotz and Lambert, this crew with Lou, it was just, to me, it was just a stunning way to give up a goal to basically shut the door early in that period. I don't know if people start heading out right after that, but I thought there was still hope going into the third, but when they got that one 2 minutes in, less than 2 minutes in, that was awful stuff. So, you know, all these signs that occasionally we've seen during the season, there have been a couple times where Lane Lambert said, you know, we gave up goals that we haven't given up. You know, there continues to be a leaky team, and that hasn't been what this team has been synonymous with in this little era here.
Well, I'm going to throw that same question you threw at me in the beginning of the show. I mean, what are your thoughts on the remaining games here? I mean, can they win their first game in Carolina on Tuesday?
Yeah, you know, their goal right now needs to be to get it to a 7th game. Carolina. Well, yes. Okay, let me take another shot at that. Carolina lost at home, as you know, to your beloved Rangers last year in a game 7. When you get to a game 7, by the way, home ice hasn't meant anything in the NHL in a long time. It's not like the NBA, where even that's changing in that league. But they have to get it to a 7th game. So So I'm not saying let's take it a game at a time. I'm saying you got to win 1 in Carolina, 1 at home. Is that unreasonable? No, it is not unreasonable. So as much as we're concerned how today was bad, you know, they showed enough in Carolina. They showed enough on Friday. They still have the goaltender who has been good, not great. We get it, Sorokin. I still think that's a significant advantage. I'm surprised that it's Ronta still, but I can't blame them. But can they win Tuesday and Friday back at UBS? Yes, they can.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Again, they can. Whether they do or not, it depends on which Islander team shows up. And up until today, I think that they hung very well with Carolina. They could have won one of those 2 games in Carolina if things had gone their way. And maybe we'll focus a little more now on the officiating. Obviously, you've seen your fair share of playoff series over the course of time. When you look at the calls and non-calls that happened, I mean, is this anything out of the ordinary for you? Do you feel like it's been a little more egregious compared to other series? I mean, look, I'm not going to sit here and say the way that these games are called are the reason why the Islanders are down 3-1. I don't follow that way of thinking here. But
well, the officiating around all the playoff series this year, you know, if you look, whether you're watching, whether you're seeing the reaction on social media, it's been pretty bad across the board. So I don't know, you know, there isn't a point going back to necessarily previous series, but It's bad out there. I saw a tweet from Arthur Staple, who's obviously covering the Rangers now for The Athletic, and he weighed in on that early call. I think it was the one that gave the Islanders the 5-on-3, and he said, "Look, right away, the refs have put themselves in a position where now everybody's looking at them." And I thought that was well said by Arthur. So that just again goes to the point that you just have to shake these things off. You almost have to go into the game expecting this.
Right?
You had a game in Carolina where the Islanders got no power plays. Carolina got 6, and Rod Brindamore was able to say that he wasn't happy with the officiating because his guy got his hand slashed, by J.G. Peugeot. So. It just, there is so much. It'll be interesting to talk to Peter about this a little bit, because not just because of the Toronto Islanders series, but I was covering the NHL the year that they played Chicago in the playoffs in Stanley Cup final, and I was around the Blackhawks a lot. I was around Peter's teams a lot too during those runs, and you feel like you're playing not just the other team sometimes, but you're playing the city. You're playing their fan base. You're playing the media, who all of a sudden seem to take more sides during the playoffs, which is interesting to me. So there's a lot to handle here, and I would give Lane Lambert a failing grade so far as to how he's handled it.
Okay.
But it doesn't mean, and he also will
Can you expand on that?
Well, what we'll say is, when you're up against it in the playoffs, like the Islanders have been since the first game, the very somber, quiet, somewhat morose, passion-free response. Listen, it just doesn't play well. That doesn't necessarily mean you're a bad coach. But what I'm saying is this is in the entertainment business, and these playoff series are plays. These are movies, and there's a lot more to it than just having your guys out there and having your system. Barry Trotz wasn't the most always visibly upset, passionate guy, but he could bring it, and it just doesn't look good. And there's no reason to believe, right now, if you were to look at today, you would say Rod Brindamore. It wouldn't be a stretch to say Rod had his guys ready today after they were kind of humiliated Friday.
Sure.
Right? They were. They didn't just lose. They gave up 4 goals in a record amount of time, and Matt Martin was running them left and right and laughing, and they're losing the little battles and the scrums and the fights and all that. And Nate just goes off and he hits Nelson.
Right.
But who won today?
They swept it all under the rug and came out today.
And Nate just was great. And their top guys, and they're losing some of their top guys, but their top guys were great, and Horvat was not. That'll be for after, later on in the show.
Yes, his name is in the cards.
Barzal was not. Lane's going to have to figure it out. You can never change who you are, but he's going to have to find some ways to adapt, because this is not play well, and it's an entertainment business, and you have to start thinking about next season if you don't get out of it this week, and there's a lot there.
No, it's an interesting point to make, because he does get fiery behind the bench. When the games are being played, you can see some emotion coming out there. But whenever he's interviewed, always even keel. And sometimes you like to see some level-headedness from your coach. But you're right, maybe it is to a fault where let's see a little bit of fire here, especially with, whether you agree with it or not, there is some things to get a little emotional and fiery about when you talk about the calls. Like, back your team up. Talk about how Mayfield got screwed. I mean, he played it very by the book. I didn't agree with it. Okay.
Yeah, I think this is his natural personality anyway, but I also can't help but wonder, we've had guests on early in the year, Kevin Kurz, Andrew Gross, and they talked pretty openly about how Lou would probably kind of quietly lose his mind when Barry would say too much, and you got to believe Lane's aware of that, so maybe he's just keeping it close to the vest. It's the best defense that I could come up with for Lane right now.
All right, well, we got plenty more to talk about here on Hockey Night in New York. I want to thank you all for tuning in at twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY, your favorite podcast providers. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, former New York Islanders head coach Peter Laviolette, and, of course, Stanley Cup champion with the Carolina Hurricanes. We'll be right back.
I don't want to hear it. It's over. I can't believe they fell short again.
Yeah, but they played so well. They made it to the semifinals 2 years in a row.
The semifinals aren't the cup. God damn it, I hate those Lightning.
They'll get another shot at it next year.
I don't even want to talk about it anymore, all right? They lost, okay? let me just sit here and enjoy the one thing that makes me a little bit happy. This fresh, delicious, tasty, meaty, turkey-filled Blue Line combo. I eat 3 every day to help keep me strong.
Hey, Donnie, can I have one of those?
Coming right up. Talk about a blast from the Blue Line.
Blue Line Deli and Bagels. Our goal is to make you a hero.
Miss the days of mixtapes and arcades? Love the taste of a bold IPA or maybe an ice-cold lager? There's a place where all of those magical things come together. Lost Farmer Brewing Company. At 63A East 2nd Street in the heart of Mineola, Lost Farmer combines a love of the 80s and a passion for quality beer to create brews that can only be described as gnarly, radical, and totally tubular. The retro vibe of the tasting bar will amp up your nostalgia while the blend of both local and exotic ingredients amp up your taste buds. Beer not your thing? Crack open a can of cider or sip a Chardonnay on the extended patio. Order up from the snack menu. You can even bring your own. If you're more of a homebody, pick up a growler to go or order online at lostfarmerbrewing.com. And for all of Long Island's hockey fans, Lost Farmer created the delicious Stable Shaker American Lager to celebrate the newly built UBS Arena at Belmont Park. Whether you're at the stable for a hockey game, concert, or a comedy show, you can find Stable Shaker by can and draft around the arena. So raise a cup to the next cup with Lost Farmer Brewery, the future of Long Island craft beer.
Thanks for giving some time to our sponsors. Ready to talk more Isles? The train rolls on right here on Hockey Night in New York.
And it's Chris Spada and Sean Cuthbert back with you, and we're really glad to be joined by the all-time winningest American head coach in the history of the National Hockey League. He led the Islanders' revival, one of the greatest turnarounds in NHL history by points. Stanley Cup for the Carolina Hurricanes, 2 more Stanley Cup finals. Besides that, didn't really accomplish much in his coaching career so far, but hopefully he'll keep it going. How are you, Peter? It's Peter Laviolette. How are you, Pete?
Guys, how you doing tonight? Chris, good to see you, buddy.
Same here, Peter.
Sean, how are you?
Doing great. Great to have you on, Peter. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Question for you right away. You engineered some pretty remarkable comebacks. First with the Islanders being down 2-0 to Toronto and getting back in that series, but of course, most famously being one of the few to come back from 0-3 down. When you're a head coach and you're down 3-1 and you're going on the roads for Game 5, and hopefully you're getting it back to Game 7, what is your approach with your team?
Well, a couple of things before just commenting on those. That going down 2-0 with the Islanders, and that was one of the greatest series that after 20 plus years of coaching that I've ever been a part of. It was my first one. It was one of the best ones just because of the way it went down and going to 7 games. And it was just awesome, that series. The Boston series was crazy in the fact that we were down 3-0, and then we made it back to 3-3. And then from there, we go down 3-0 in the game before the 10-minute mark of the first period, and somehow able to find our way back in that one. And that one was just unbelievable to be a part of, to watch a group of guys fight for something and get after it. And just an unbelievable job coming back in that game. But I think when you're down 3-1, the message is pretty simple. It's not about what happened in the first 4 games. It's not about winning 7 games. It's just about that one game and just making sure that you're ready to play and getting guys on the same page, trying to find something that can bring a group together and get them fired up. And but it's a big challenge, a difficult challenge, but I'll tell you, when you're able to come back from something like that, it's pretty special too.
Yeah, it sure is. When you coached against these Islanders, meaning Barry's Islanders and now Lane's Islanders and their system, you've also coached against the Rod Brindamore Hurricanes. Let's start with the Islanders. When the Islanders are at their best, and you saw some of that these last couple of years, you also got the better of them famously just about a week or two ago, and threw a wrench in the plans of the fans of Long Island for a little while. Yeah. What are the Islanders doing when they are at their best?
I think that they're good defensively. Like there's not too much risk to their game. Sometimes when we talk about playing them, like you really have to make sure that you're not trying to run and gun with them. You're not trying to create something that's not there. They're comfortable winning the game 1-0 or 2-1. And it's almost like you have to be comfortable with that as well, because if you try to do too much, you leave yourself open. And they do have some really talented players offensively that can make things happen. And so for me, it's, there's not so much of the pinching or so much of their D involved. Like you don't catch a lot of odd man rushes and a lot of odd man breaks against them. And you got to mind your business. You got to play the game and just consistently try to go through it for 60 minutes. And to me, that's when they're at their best. They're playing good defense. Their goaltending is very good. And they can get, if they can get a lead, and then you have to push even more from the opposite side, that exposes it even more. And then they're able to get the next goal and the next goal and kind of build on that. And so pretty disciplined with what they're doing.
And knowing Carolina, those home fans, how loud it gets, the hurricane system. And I don't know, it seems like every time I check the NHL app during the season, they're out shooting somebody 23-6, 7 minutes in. So if you're the Islanders, what are the things you're looking to do to maybe quiet that crowd, settle things down for Game 5?
You're right. I mean, the Carolina's been really good for, this year and last year. For a couple of years, they've been dominant with the way they play the game. And for me, they're fast, and it's almost the opposite of the way the Islanders play the game. They are about speed. They're about quantity of pucks at the net, and through quantity, it creates quality. And they're difficult. They skate, they work, they press, they forecheck in the offensive zone, they forecheck in the neutral zone. They're looking for quick strikes the other way. And so it's really for me, it's a little bit of a contrast of two teams and two styles in the way they play the game. And so Carolina was tough when we played them. And then it's a little bit demoralizing too, because you're right. You could look up 10 minutes into the game and look at the shot clock, and it could be 11-2. And you're like, wow, I thought we were ready to play, but they just throw so many pucks at the net. And like I said, they press all the time, and they have the speed and the players to do it. It's a harder game. For me, it's a harder game to play against. And so, the Islanders, they're going to have to be ready for it. They're going into a building, and it's going to be a good challenge for them, a good test. But I also know that those are the games that you can win that can really build some resolve with your group as well.
No question about it, Peter. And I think the biggest difference in this series has had to have been the special teams, and it's something that the Islanders have been struggling with on the power play throughout the season. It's bled into the playoffs here, even with getting Matt Barzal back. And I think you can make an argument that they have the horses to get it done, and they just haven't been able to do it throughout this series. I think they're 1-for-12 against the Hurricanes. When you have a team that's in that situation, you're pressing, you're looking to change things up, you're just trying to keep rolling out the same 5 guys, the same 2 units, you're looking to change things up and kind of just stick with it and hope it finally drops, or do you kind of get a little antsy and say, hey, maybe it's time to switch things up because things just aren't working out?
I think I haven't followed it. I'm kind of bouncing around, not just watching one series, and had the Bruins game on today and watched a little bit of that, and so without watching what exactly went on in the series and just commenting generally speaking, I think it depends on what you see. And oftentimes, I think when you're watching the game 5-on-5, or you're watching your power play, or you're watching your penalty kill, if you like what you're seeing, if the results other than goals, the zone time, the shots, the quality of shots, the possession time, the in zone opportunity that they're getting, if you like it, I don't know if you necessarily change it up that much. But if you don't like what you're seeing, I think that there's always room for change, and sometimes it's just a small change too. You change one piece, you move one person, and something good can happen. But again, the penalty kill for Carolina is pretty good as well. And so again, they're aggressive with what they do. They play an aggressive style. And I always think that those penalty kills are a little bit more tougher. The teams that sit back a little bit and defend in the box, I think that that's a little bit easier to look good and to feel good and possibly get looks. but the teams that press hard and they work hard, take time and space, don't give you a lot of opportunity. Those are the ones that I think can sometimes be a little bit tougher to play against.
For sure. And when it comes to officiating, a lot's been said about the officiating in this series.
Yeah.
And, just as a head coach behind the bench, and when you guys, you feel like things aren't going your way, how do you keep the focus on the bench when you feel like you're not only playing against the team on the other end of the ice, but also maybe a little bit against the officiating as well? How do you keep that focus on the bench?
Yeah, I think I've mellowed a little bit with regard to that. I don't know, just getting older, the officials have such a tough job. And so there's always good calls, there's tough calls. Just like players have good games and bad games, or coaches do the wrong thing or the right thing. It's tough with officiating. Sometimes the game goes so fast, like, we start to yell and we think we see something. Right. And then we have to look on the TV and we're asking the guy in the headset back in the video room, hey, is this what happened? Is this? And they're watching it one time and they're watching it quick. And so, obviously the 2 goals there was one last night in Tampa, and then there was one today too with Boston, their first goal. Like it was quick. I mean, it was tied up. I mean, they're almost identical scenarios, and those situations are tough. And I think back to some of the times that it's happened with us as well, even those situations of the whistle and the goal, and the whistle being blown and the puck being loose, and some of those situations are tough. But the game moves so quick on the officials. It's playoffs, so I mean, everybody's emotional. Everybody is jumping up and down, and they're bought in. Their heart's in it. Their passion's in it. Their purpose is in it. And when that call goes against you, and it's just crazy how much it can affect your bench, and you got to reel it in really quick and get back to work, because it can definitely take you off course a little bit.
Along those lines, Peter, does it take a coach sometimes a playoff season or two to learn how to navigate these playoffs? I think about, when we played Toronto and I was there and you were the head coach, it feels like you're not just playing the Maple Leafs, but you're playing the city, a fan base, sometimes
a history.
The history, the media, if you don't mind me saying, as your former media guy. I saw you Philadelphia against Chicago, and in your Boston series, and I got the sense that you knew how to play the game a little bit when it came to talking about the officials, about the other team. So when it comes to Lane Lambert, is it possible that he's learning that right now?
I think you're always learning, Chris. Like, even now, like, you learn in regular season, you learn when you work with new coaches, you learn when you work with new players, you learn when you try new systems. I think Lane's done a good job. It's a tough division that we're in, and I think he's put a really smart system in there. They play hard, and I think he's done a good job. I do think that you learn. That's not knocking him. I think about that first series for me. I still think it was one of the greatest series to ever be a part of. It was so physical. It was violent. It went back and forth. It had the injuries. It had the penalty shot. It had the fights. It had the hits. And it was my first series. And so if you're asking me if I'm as experienced in that first series as I am now after coaching for 20 years and being parts of lots of series, not even nearly, but in the moment, I thought we could have won. I thought we could have won game 7. I think the score was 3-2. It's not like we went up into Toronto in game 7 and got embarrassed because we didn't know what we were doing. But that was the score. They won it 3-2 and they moved on. But I think he's done a good job, and there's no question you're always learning. I'm still learning.
Absolutely. And I'm not going to ask you to coach Bo Horvat specifically, but Horvat, acquired by the Islanders a few months ago, really now after a pretty good start, and yes, he's winning his face-offs. He's good. He's been good defensively, but pretty epically, Peter, I'm not expecting you to follow this closely, he has struggled. The offensive production after getting 30 goals in Vancouver has not been there. He scored a goal very late in the game today. Maybe that helps him. But when you have a player going through the kind of thing that Bo Horvat's going through now, do you pull him aside? Are there things, he knows what he's going through. He knows the stats. But are there things that you could do that you've done in your experience with all the great centers that you've worked with through the years to try to get them ready for that next game and to put this behind them?
So, it's, Chris, there's the year we won the Cup, we ended up making a trade for Doug Waite and Mark Recchi. And the thing about making a trade and bringing a player in is that trying to find the right slot, like, Bo Horvat knew his slot where he was at. And then he got traded. And this happens all the time. It happens with, players that I've seen leave our team this year. And sometimes you slide right in and fit right in, and you're right in your role and right in your space, but then sometimes you're not. And usually it seems to me sometimes with the higher end guys, when you already have a team that's a playoff caliber team, and now you're trying to slide somebody in and fit somebody in, it may not seem perfect, without speaking about Bo Horvat or that particular situation. But just going from my experience, when we had Doug Waite and Mark Recchi, we had a pretty good team in Carolina. But when these guys came from us, they were already first line players. And so we already had a first line. And so when you start shedding those minutes around in different directions and responsibility, and you're trying to see where you fit in exactly. And so Dougie was there. We made that trade, I think, in January. Jim Rutherford did a great job of pulling that trade off in like mid-January to get him here, to get him acclimated. His value showed up so much as the playoff series went on. And we ended up winning a cup. And both of those guys, I believe, had, 16 or 17 points. They didn't have Eric Stahl's 26 points, but they came in and they provided unbelievable offense and unbelievable depth for our team, which is what you need now. You see the guys getting hurt and the players going down and the players that are unavailable for every game right now. And so this depth becomes so important. And so I wouldn't, they need to win a big game coming up here. But if they can get through this and continue to move on, a player of that quality and that caliber is going to be a huge difference maker for them, I believe, if they continue to move on in the playoffs.
No doubt about it, Peter. And the last one from me, you talked about how incredible that first series was against the Toronto Maple Leafs, your first season with the New York Islanders. And you also talk about just, how it's always a learning experience. Are you able to look back on that first season with the New York Islanders, and do you have maybe a takeaway from that first year as being a rookie head coach and taking all that into account? Is there something you're able to look back on and say, yeah, this is something big I learned from that season from coaching that team?
I mean, not really that I can think of. What I remember
about that, getting off to an 11-1-1 start.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
No. So what I was going to say was, what I remember was it hadn't been perfect there for a few years, and to be able when I was coaching in Wheeling in the East Coast Hockey League, and when I was coaching in Providence for the Providence Bruins, I was trying to create some sort of a family and some sort of an atmosphere inside the room to bring guys together, to make them feel a part of it. And to watch that group grow inside of that season, I think we just missed winning the division by 1 point, but we played really well. Those guys played their hearts out. And to me, watching that happen, especially as a first-year head coach, was unbelievable. You're right. We had a great start. I thought we had a really good team. I thought Mike did a good job of pulling in some pieces that, he pulled in Pekka, he pulled in Sean Bates. I thought our defense was good. In picking up a goaltender that gives us a chance to be successful. And so there's a lot of pieces that got added to that. And we were able to find our way through that year. And for a team that wasn't really expected to do anything, I'll look back at that group and just think about the accomplishment of what we were able to do, and especially the games and how loud they were inside of that first playoff series. I think the thing that I'll leave with disappointment is that we didn't win that seventh game, because it was a heck of a series. And if you're going to go 7 games in your first series with a group, it would be awesome to win that seventh game, but it wasn't in the cards for that year.
I had a big smile when you used the word community, because of what you had done in West Virginia and Providence. And I could tell the fans here, and I'm going to say this with you on the air, that was no line of bullshit, because we had I'm going to take you back 20 years or so. That year we debuted a post-game radio show in the little bar at the Coliseum. We'd come in through the back door right? Yeah. And when you first went over there, which might have been after the first game, after you said, you didn't know we were doing that, right? And you said, if this, I welcome go in there every time you want me because I'm trying to build something here. And if the fans are going to pack this bar after a Tuesday night game, win or lose, I'd rather, be accountable. You have any recollection of that, or 5 teams?
I do remember that. I think that's a big part of it, Chris. Like when you are trying to build something, it's got to be a little bit more than just players. I think it gets a little bit deeper into the families and the staff and the fan base, and getting a little bit connected. And at the end of the day, you can sit there when the building's rocking. You mentioned Carolina rocking. Oftentimes it's this relationship between the fans and the building. If you give them a reason, they can try to get you going, but you got to respond, or vice versa. You got to give them a reason to get going. And so to me, that building was unbelievable. Like I remember I couldn't talk. There was, when Batesy scored, or when, I remember Jimmy Cummins fighting in Game 6, or going out there, and we lined him
Cairns and Corson.
Oh yeah,
we lined him up every shift against somebody that we wanted to just make sure that that person was in check, and he did an unbelievable job in that game. But I remember when we scored goals. I think we scored 6 maybe in Game 6, if I'm not mistaken. And so it was loud. I mean, it was loud. You couldn't talk to your coaches, and that was playoff hockey. Everything made it so special. It was the series itself. It was the opponent. Toronto played great. I thought our guys played great. It came down to a Game 7, and we didn't get it done. But the fans in Long Island were spectacular with filling that building and making it just an unreal place. So good stuff.
They sure
good memories.
Yeah. Last one here is after you parted ways with Washington mutually, I didn't want to reach out to you, but because I was curious as to what your plans were. And then Elliot Friedman comes on. I think it was Hockey Night in Canada, his 32 Thoughts. Mm-hmm. And he reports, he says, despite maybe some buzz that may be out there, it is my understanding, and I know when Elliot says it's my understanding, that means something's happening, right? When he says, I think this guy might get traded, you might as well start packing, everybody, right? So, but he says, but it is my understanding that Peter Laviolette has every intention to, continue his coaching career. Could you say, is that your hope?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I had a 3-year contract in Washington, and I loved my time here. And it was about trying to take a veteran group and push them to the next level. And that contract is going to expire in June. My wife and I are looking forward to heading down to Florida for a little bit, and that's where we live, and just spend a little bit of time. But definitely, I want to get back into it, and I want to try and see if I can't help a group push themselves and find their way back to a championship, or get into the playoffs and push from there. And so, I'm excited about that. And, it's funny, when I worked on Chris, when you said Elliot Friedman, I remember I worked on the TSN panel, and somebody said something on the panel, a very senior person said something. And I challenged it. I questioned it. And I said, I don't think so. I don't think that's, and he looked at me, he said, Lavi, this just doesn't fall from the sky. This doesn't fall from the sky. And so he was basically saying, if it's coming out of my mouth, it's pretty true. So Elliot was. Oh yeah,
Elliot, I don't know if it was
Elliot
Bob
was
McKenzie.
Right with what he was saying.
If it was McKenzie and maybe Drager, I'd be like, well, you might as well just put it in.
Yeah, no, yeah, it was. Well, you nailed one of the two. Yeah.
Very cool.
Well, Peter, an absolute pleasure having you on the show, and I really, really appreciate your time. Thank you so much, and you helped create a lot of memories for this guy in that series against the Toronto Maple Leafs in that season. It was a lot of fun to watch. So thanks a lot for that, and thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, good stuff. Thank you guys for having me on, and I'll talk to you later. Take care.
Thanks, Coach. My best to
Chris. Have a good summer, guys.
Thanks, guys.
You too. Bye. All right, that was Peter Laviolette, former head coach of the New York Islanders, and currently in the market for a new coaching job.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it, but when he said, how his hope is to get back, if you're one of these teams, so the Washington's the only job that he's had where I said, I don't know about that, but I understood it was 3 years, veteran team, a year after Trotz. The idea was
you followed him twice.
Yeah, the idea was just to try to take one more whack at it. And but like unlike Nashville, Flyers, Islanders, Carolina, it was different than those jobs. If you're a team like Anaheim, who's fired Dallas Eakins, and you're having trouble turning it around, or you're looking for a big jump to respectability and more. Like, I would forget about the Washington, whatever. And by the way, they had injuries. Even the general manager stood up for Peter, was very classy, saying, look, it just, there was a lot of things that got in the way. We're moving forward. He wants to move forward. Anaheim is one of the first teams for a job next year. Maybe he goes a year and spends more time with his family, does a little broadcasting. But if you're one of those teams that's now been a while since you figured it out, it's amazing that, to me, it doesn't always seem like he's somebody's first call, but the record speaks for itself. He's throughout Washington, everyone else has gone to the finals, or he turned around the godforsaken Islanders. I get it. He had some help, because that was the year Charles told Milbury spend the money, and they got Yashin and everybody. But he's a really, really good coach, and that stuff about community is all true. It's what he's done everywhere he's gone.
Yeah, didn't he take the team out for like a retreat prior to the season during training camp or something like that?
Yeah, he was big on that too.
Yeah.
There was, I think, one of those years we were at Lake Placid for a couple of years, and there was like a day or two long retreat. He's definitely. He's got some of that Al in him. I know a lot of fans are saying, why? By the way, he has a good relationship with Lou Lamoriello, to answer that question. To the fans wondering why why we didn't ask him. I'm not going to. Peter wouldn't have answered the question about coming back down. He has too much respect for Lane Lambert, for the profession. He wouldn't want anybody talking about him, right? If somebody was doing an interview in March about taking over the Capitals job, he'd be furious. So, and I'm not the New York Times here, right? Like we happen to be friends. So I'm not putting him in that position. He wouldn't answer it anyway. Sure. But he does do a good job with getting people to buy in. When it comes to the Islanders, just tactically, I will say he's a pressing guy. He's right. Yes. You know hockey better than I do. He's a go guy. Right. Generally, defensive, responsibly,
heavy on the forecheck.
But not that, and that's not what we've seen. So if the Islanders, and this is for a show, in a couple of weeks or whatever, whenever this is over, if the Islanders are going to kind of rip this thing up and start, total tear down of the roster and take like a different approach, sure. He would be somebody you would consider giving.
Well, let's see what happens Tuesday, and then maybe Friday before we start talking about that. But I understand the fans kind of having their opinions about that stuff, and not everybody's going to be happy with the coaching staff. But Peter did mention something about being in a playoff series and trying to dig back, and he talked about the importance of depth with players getting injured.
Yeah.
And the Islanders ran into issues with that right off the bat in this series, where Romanov wasn't ready to go. They did get Barzal back, but they were exposed a little bit on the defensive end. Samuel Bolduc was thrown out there, thrown to the Wolves a little bit.
Very fair point, Sean.
And he ends up struggling in those first couple games. And these games have been so tight up until these last two. But even before, even with the scores, getting out of hand towards the end, this has been a very tightly contested series. The first couple games, 1-goal games, and it really did come down to one play here and one play there, or one call here or one call there if you want to go there. But the Islanders were perhaps victims of that lack of depth because, it wasn't difficult to see that Samuel Bolduc, who hopefully does become a good, productive member of this organization, was out of his element in this playoff series to start, and that's why he's no longer in it. And Romanov gets healthy, yes, but it looked like he wasn't going to play anyway in the last game.
Yeah.
So,
it's a great point. It was not on my list to talk about today, but we were surprised. It always feels like you can get a defenseman, and we're not talking about a ghost for a third round. For a third rounder, a puck mover, just some sort of depth. Once 1D went down, now you're looking at a Bolduc or a Parker or somebody like that. And so that is a little surprising, a little un-Lou-like to not be ready for that. And that's a miss. That's a mistake.
Because it kind of looks like they could have used that veteran Andy Green pickup, right? Which he normally would take care of, right?
No, totally fair.
Yeah, so it's, we'll never find out what happened. I'm sure there were conversations that were had and nothing panned out, but unfortunately it ended up being something that really hurt them in the early going in this series. And depending on how the rest of it goes, it's something everybody's going to look back on and say, hey, what happened there?
Yeah.
But listen, the power play big issue. We talked to Peter about it a little bit here. I mean,
By the way, Peter's second season, and maybe I alluded to this on one of the shows that we did, when it comes to assistant coaches and power play. So Peter's second year, Kelly Miller was the assistant coach, and the power play just never got figured out. But somewhere along the line, it was known that Kelly was in charge of the Islanders' power play. Kelly, who was a guy who I think probably played 1,000 games, was a terrific defensive forward in the NHL for a long time, well-respected guy. And, man, that just stuck with us. And I say us because I was there as the PR guy, and I felt bad. It was just like, Kelly Miller sucks, get him out of here. And you kind of, I think people assume that John McClain, is the engineer of the power play. Whoever it is, it's just getting worse and worse, and it becomes a mountain. And then they give up a shorthanded goal the other night.
Right. Yeah, no, they can't.
What do you do? Do you just,
I was hoping that Peter had the magic answer.
Well, but I liked what he said about the aggressiveness of Carolina. So it's probably no deeper than a personnel thing. Like, this is just not matching.
I guess so. It has to be.
Explain the face you just made, because I appreciated your exasperation. Is on point.
Well, look, it was very easy to point the finger at the coaching staff when this regime, the first version of this regime, took over, right? Everybody was calling for Scott Gomez's head when he was running the power play. Then they brought in somebody else. It was the same thing. And here we are 3-4 years later, and they're still struggling. And yeah, a couple of guys have come in and out, but for the most part, it's the same guys. And you know that they're trying different things in power plays. They talked about how they switched their formation to the 2-1-2 formation, and it isn't really yielding results until Palmieri's goal late in the game the other night. But it's almost baffling to me because, you've seen the replays. Bo Horvat can score on the power play. Matt Barzal knows how to dish on the power play. Andres Lee has scored plenty of goals in front of the net in the power play. Brock Nelson knows how to snipe from the top of the slot. These are guys that can score goals. There was a time when Ryan Pulock used to take blasts from the point. He's not really on the power play anymore, probably because he doesn't hit the net. But the point is that they do have guys capable of scoring on the power play because they do it 5-on-5. They do it even strength. So it's just mind-boggling, and I guess I'm just going on a rant here because we're not going to come to any solution here on the show, but it's just so strange and crazy to me that this team can't figure it out, and it literally is biting them in the ass in this series. It has been the difference. Whether you like the calls or not, the Canes have been scoring on their power plays, and the Islanders haven't.
And I know, this is a topic that I'm obsessed with at times because it's such a fascinating one, but it shows that as an organization, so yes, I'm bringing this back to Lou Lamoriello,
okay.
that you could have all these rules and all these expectations and how things have to be done. But when it comes to even just setting up a power, those don't relate. They do not correlate to being, you would think we have all this, we would also have the structure to also, again, not scoring is one thing, but then also not having chances or never getting set up, or giving up a key shorthanded goal as they did late in the game, late in the second the other day. It's inexcusable, and there's no reason to expect that to change. So I know the easy one is every time the Islanders go on a power play, 40 people tweet to the Islanders account, decline the penalty, things like that. But I think there's something to be said for you're looking to hold serve there, not get scored upon. It's really bad what's gone on there, and yet they made the playoffs, right? And yet they have a chance to stay in it. So I should also say I appreciate, going back to the Peter. Peter doesn't have to compliment Lane Lambert. He brought it up. I didn't ask him about the job, or you didn't ask him about the job. Lane Lambert did. He talked about him and that he thought he was doing a good job. That's classy to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's 30 jobs in this league, right? 32 jobs in this league, and Peter doesn't have one of them, and he's complimenting a guy who's down 3-1 in the playoffs. It's smart. It's classy.
There you go. So why don't we unwind a little bit and take a break? But before we do, why don't you tell us a little bit about Main Street Board Game Cafe?
Main Street Board Game Cafe in Huntington Village on Long Island's North Shore. Games for sale and for open play, food and drink, beer and wine, fun, and friends. Their Magic the Gathering, Dungeons and Dragons, or Game Night Live communities are welcoming for all. They do parties and corporate events. As you know, they're located at 30 Main Street in Huntington Village. Go to mainstboardgamecafe.com for more information. mainstboardgamecafe.com for more information. Main Street Board Game Cafe. Find your crowd, unplug your game. We thank them, Neil, for their sponsorship all season. It's a great, great place. And hey, what beats Huntington is so nice down there.
It's a great town.
Yeah,
it's a great town.
nice.
So there you go, folks. 307 Main Street in Huntington Village. We're going to take a quick break. Thank you so much for tuning in to twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY and your favorite podcast providers. We'll be right back.
New York Islanders fans, Sunday night is Hockey Night in New York. Whether you were raised at the barn in Uniondale or born in the stable at Belmont, tune in to Hockey Night in New York. Catch us live from Floored Media in Rockville Center, Sunday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, as we cover all things Islanders at twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY. All episodes are also available on YouTube and all your favorite podcast providers. And for all you social butterflies, you can follow at HockeyNightNY on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram for all the latest updates. Hockey Night in New York, the best night of the week for any Islanders fan. Hey there, welcome back. We missed you too. Now kick up your feet and settle back in to Hockey Night in New York.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Kick up your feet, settle back in to Hockey Night in New York for yet another therapy session here from Floored Media in Rockville Center. So we touched on Bo Horvat a little bit during the interview with Mr. Peter Laviolette, so why don't we keep that going? Chris Botta, Bo Horvat brought in, he was the big acquisition. He signs a long 8-year deal that a lot of people are groaning about now because not a lot's happening on the ice and on the score sheet. But what can this man do to turn this around? What does he got to do?
I'm not worried. I'm not saying you were implying that I was either about the 8 years of this deal.
Right.
What I am worried about or concerned about is actually what's going on now. And let's not lose sight of the fact that Bo, when he was on Vancouver, had a great playoff a couple of years ago in the bubble, 10 goals and all that. I'm concerned by his often long stretches of ineffectual play, and I'll borrow a line that I've seen on social media, and it is true that it is alarming how for long stretches we haven't even heard Brendan Burke say his name. Now, I get it that sometimes if you're a defenseman, for example, and they're not saying your name, that's probably sometimes could be a good thing. That means you're not screwing up.
Correct.
When you're a center and you're getting 18 to 22 minutes a game, and and you're not hearing your name called, I believe his goal today was his lone shot on goal, accredited shot on goal for the game. At least last I had checked. It is very alarming. He is winning the face-offs. I'm not going to get caught up in that he's doing the little things. Well, he's expected to do those.
Right.
I'm just surprised that he doesn't seem to have his nose in the middle of play as often as I thought he would. I'm a guy, and I know you were too, who was very much in favor of this trade, and in favor. Well, you were
I willed it,
touting and willed it and predicted it before everybody.
Right.
And I'm not changing on that. I'm just. I'm not going to give him the excuse of, well, maybe he's a little banged up. There's something not working there. So I guess what I'm saying is, like, you might want to throw the Lions in a blender for Tuesday. You might want to just, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's some of that. At least to start, you might want to just, whatever it is, just throw out some different combinations. And I think we will see some different looks. Last thing I'll say about Bo is I saw him interviewed after the game today. MSG showed the clip. Sir Kevin Kurz, it sounded like Kevin asking him the questions. I imagine if it hasn't posted already, it will be by the morning. The story about Bo Horvat and his struggles. I do appreciate, I know this doesn't count for much with fans, but I will say that Bo was honest. He did put it on himself. He was even kind of critical, like me scoring in the last couple of minutes of a blowout game.
Right.
That does, he doesn't need points from me, but that you get points for that. Like I've seen guys ask those kind of questions, and I've stood there either after having asked them or being the PR guy on the side and just kind of been like, is this guy kidding himself? Bo Horvat's not kidding himself. He understands what's going on. He understands what he has done is not nearly good enough.
Right.
So the fact that he has that reality, and the fact that he did get that garbage time goal, I don't care. It was a breakaway. By the way, if he didn't score, I would have been off, right? It does give some confidence. So let's hope he could break out. What are you seeing in his game?
No, I think you hit it on the head when you said you barely heard his name called. And that's the interesting thing about it, is that he just hasn't been very noticeable. I mean, yeah, he's had a couple of chances that didn't end up going his way. But, yeah, it's been kind of quiet with names like him. There's a couple other names out there. Like, I thought Zach Parise was going to have a big series. I haven't seen much out of him, at least offensively. He's done well on the PK and whatnot. But back to Horvat, yeah, he's been quiet. And look, you can use the he's winning faceoffs and doing the other things, the other little things, for an extent, right? And then the whole, Barzal got hurt, and they had great, he got hurt, and they had great chemistry. And once he comes back, everything's going to be fine. Barzal comes back, they're both struggling. Barzal had the one big goal, but aside from that, he's struggling a little bit too. And look, the bottom line is he's just not getting it done. He wasn't brought in to be a complimentary piece. He wasn't brought in to be a guy who just wins faceoffs and just wears a couple of different hats when a guy like Pajot goes down and he plays the PK and whatnot. Like, this is a guy who was having a career year putting pucks in the net, and he's gotten here to the island, and it's not happening in the most crucial time. And the shame of it is, and again, doesn't win a lot of points with the fans, but you know that he wants it. He was super excited going into this playoff series. He knows that weight is on his shoulders. He knows why he was brought in and what he's supposed to be doing, and he carries that. And maybe that's in his head a little bit. Maybe he's thinking a little too much about it. But he's not getting it done, and in a tight series like this, I mean, there's going to be a huge microscope on it, and everybody looks at the big picture and says, wow, we brought this guy in. We were all happy about him signing for 8 years, and he's not getting it done in the playoffs. Is this what we're going to have to expect now for the duration of his contract? And look, if there's no better time than Tuesday, let's see it.
And
he's due.
Yeah, and nobody was expecting him to keep up the pace that he had in Vancouver, right? I feel like that's
right.
Like,
yeah, especially coming to this team.
I think people were looking at 30, 30, 60, 35, 35, 70, and nobody was looking for him to continue the torrid pace, which was uncharacteristic with his previous years. Everybody acknowledged that.
Right.
So there is that. Before we get into Tap, Bruin, Hero. On a Hero, tell me your take, having been at the two games, because I think it's a different one when you're there on Mr. Barzal, these two home games.
I think he's holding on to the puck too much. Not to say that hasn't been said before. Well, look.
No, I'm kidding. I didn't know.
There's moments where it works, right? When he's circling his zone, he's looking for the right play. But he's gotten, and this has happened on the power play, and in fact, I'm pretty sure it led to that shorthanded goal the other game. But he's found himself maybe trying to do too much every now and then, and maybe that's a matter of just getting back, being excited, whatever it is. But when I see an issue with Matt Barzal on the ice, it's been he's just carrying the puck a little too much. He kind of ends up putting himself into a rock and a hard place where he's got nowhere to go. He's coughing the puck up, and Canes are getting a stick on a puck, and it's going the other way, and it's causing a turnover, or whatever. And I think he's just gotta, me being the very humble viewer from the couch here, but I think he's just got to simplify a little bit and find a better balance between carrying the puck and making the right play. If you don't have a play, get it deep, cycle it, pass, dish it off to another man. I think he's just hanging on to the puck a little bit too much, and it's added to the frustrations on the power play particularly. But that aside, he doesn't look out of place. It doesn't look like he's playing catch-up after missing all those games. So it's great that he's there. You'd like to see him do a little bit more. And again, hopefully guys like him, Horvat, Lee, Nelson, the leaders of this team, dig deep. They got a couple of days now to kind of process what happened today. Go into Carolina, put it all on the line there, win one at a time here, and make a series.
Very good. Speaking of which, where do we go from here?
We're going to go, we're going to breeze through what's on tap. You don't even have to press the buttons. We know what's happening. We got Tuesday coming up, and God willing, if you believe in one, we got another one coming up on Friday, and if they can extend it past that Sunday, everybody knows Tuesday's the big night. I know a lot of people out there, it's 3-1, it's over. Let's take it one game at a time, see what happens. That's on tap.
My reason for hope on Tuesday, if I'm going to try to make one, is that, and by the way, I think we've done some pretty good work this year. Like if you look at how when we've told the story of this season, from predicting Barzal to saying they're going to make the playoffs, when I'm not going to say all the fans, I don't follow everybody, but a lot of people at one point they were at like 28%, and we were still doing that.
Yeah.
We were saying they were going to sign Horvat. A lot of things that when the Islanders lost to Peter's Caps and everybody said it was over, we made the case why it would. So I'm going to make the case for Tuesday. And by the way, if they lose, this will not be one of the clips you'll post on social media on Wednesday. But should they win, and that's just that Sorokin, who was fine.
Talked about him tonight.
Yeah, imagine that. 60 minutes in, exactly. Right. Sorokin was okay today. He didn't steal the game for them, and
he didn't lose it either.
And also, I thought. So when they lost the game in overtime, sorry to laugh. When they lost the game in overtime, and I saw all the hubbub about the high stick on Mayfield, and then I caught up on the game. The thing that stood out to me, and I'm sorry if this sounds unfairly critical of a great player in Sorokin, but I thought the overtime goal was awful. Like he just seemed like he was sliding out of position. He wasn't in control.
He was deep in his net.
Yeah, and it just and I was like, what happened there? Because like I could think of a lot of Islander goalies not nearly as good as him who I think would have made that save. So what I'm saying is that he's coming off a loss. His last game at Carolina wasn't good. Sorokin owes us nothing, but I feel like he gives them a great chance to win on Tuesday.
Every night.
And I would expect my hope, and yes, hope is not a strategy, but my hope is that he delivers a lights-out performance on Tuesday night.
Let's see it. I want to see some more Islander hockey on Friday, but why don't we get into Hero of the Week real quick? We'll go through that. And then we'll go to Questions Brewing. So, folks, when you hear this song, that means it is time for the Hero of the Week, brought to you by the Blue Line Deli and Bagels half-price hero, which this week is the Hockey Night in New York, featuring grilled chicken, buffalo sauce, mozzarella cheese, and avocado in a delicious wrap. Stop on in to the Blue Line Deli and Bagels Huntington location this week. Mention Hockey Night in New York for half off the Hockey Night in New York. So, Chris, I'll let you start things off. Who is your hero of the week?
Casey Cizikas, and I just thought of him taking that, friendly fire from. I heard Aho gets. I was like, oh man, what'd Sebastian Aho do?
He did a couple of things this series, good and bad.
And it was a Sebastian Aho on the Islanders. It's just bad luck and friendly fire. But Cizikas, he continues to, him and Martin, who I did a tweet about the other day, and I know Martin's had a couple of moments in the series that also weren't great, including Sunday's penalty. But this is a career achievement hero of the week, and that goes to Casey Cizikas, who I just have the utmost respect for. He's another guy who's been a great Islander, and let's like to see him get some more playoff games in this season.
Always a great choice. Big fan of Casey Cizikas, and I was debating between two different gentlemen. I'll give you my runner-up. It was Kyle Palmieri. Almost went with him. Yeah. But I ended up going with number 6, Ryan Pulock. Best hockey I've seen him play in an Islander.
You had the word beast in a tweet, if I recall.
Because he's been a beast in this series. Even though they're down 3-1, he's been outstanding. Since the puck dropped on game 1, he's been hitting like it's nobody's business. I mean, where has this been his Islander career? Not to say he's never thrown a hit, but he's really taken it up a notch in this series.
He hits everything except, according to you, about 8 minutes ago, the net on the power
Guilty as charged. Yeah,
I just want to make sure we're talking about the same guy.
The guy's got a bomb. He's got a bomb, but unfortunately, it's going up, it's going left, it's going right. But listen, he's been outstanding this series. The pass on Casey Cizikas' goal to open the scoring in Game 3 was outstanding. Casey even said it himself. He didn't even know Pulock saw him. He made a great play to keep the puck in there, and then he makes the pass to Cizikas. Phenomenal goal. And look, he's elevated his game in this series. You'd like to see it from a couple other guys, but he's been great. So I got to give it to hats off to Ryan Pulock.
Absolutely. Honestly, when I saw that tweet, it made me feel good. You have such an appreciation for good hockey.
Oh, yeah.
And when I saw that, I was like, all right, they're in a good place. So it just, listen, today they just picked a bad time for a stinker. A real bad time.
What's that?
My analysis of today was just a real bad.
Jay's throwing hand signs.
It felt like they were back on track, including Mr. Pollock.
Yes.
And then it was so great. He's so surprised when I give a short answer. Oh, shit. About to stop talking. Oh, shit.
Yeah, Jay's making hand signals at me. Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse
Maybe
me?
he's got a heart out, or Jay's got a date we don't know about. He's got a heart out, and we got to get the questions brewing.
Let's do some questions brewing, Edzo.
It's time for Questions Brewing. Brought to you
Were you
by
eating a
Ross
sandwich?
Farmer Brewing.
What was that?
He was talking about the sandwich.
Oh, okay.
It's the Hockey Night in New York.
Okay.
What are our,
It's a wrap. It's
three
delicious.
best questions tonight?
We just the name wasn't on there. Was the only problem.
For like the whole.
We needed more of a spiel on the sandwich description.
Oh, well, I mean, I told you all about it. I told you the ingredients. I don't know what more you want.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, you go to Blue Line Deli, you mention us, and you get half off. I mean, that's the story.
Right.
Did we sleep through that?
Yeah, you did. I said all of that stuff. That all happened.
We both.
I appreciate you looking out for me, but all of that happened. I promise.
Right. Okay. It's just we got nervous because the name of the sandwich itself was not on there. So.
Oh,
Well, we didn't include the name.
Well, guys, I'm glad you looked out for me. But let's get to some questions here. What do you got for us, Ed?
All right.
How old is that T-shirt you're wearing?
Oh,
That's a question.
It's been through the wash.
That's my question. That's been brewing.
It's.
Wait, hold on. Let's turn it.
I just noticed that now. What the hell?
There you go.
It's
You
like
know,
got
they-
a font
A
from.
little washed.
But Chris,
It's got a bit of a retro look.
They sell some of them like
I
that.
got
They
it.
like the distressed
this-
look. Ed's a hip guy.
No,
Distressed
this
is a good word.
this is relatively new. This is like 2020. I got this. It's only 3 years old.
From
It's just-
here,
it's just been
from here,
through the ringer.
it doesn't just seem
Yeah.
like
All
it's
right.
trying to look
We'll
old.
do Fashion Corner with that another episode. Let's get some questions.
All right,
in.
so we'll start this off from Enzeb. I mean, I didn't even read the whole thing, but it starts off with a direct message for you, Sean.
Oh boy, here
Sean,
we go. Oh, he's been on my case all week, John.
You say
Yeah,
they have
thank
a
you.
few days to look at themselves and turn it around. It's the playoffs. Don't you think the coach, the captain, should have already addressed this? What makes you think they could turn it around when their back is against the wall today and they crapped the bed?
And Zeb, I didn't say they're going to. I said hopefully they do. I mean, listen, this is all we got now is hope, not a strategy, as Chris expertly said. But
enough.
look, this is how the games go sometimes. You know what I mean? I mean, look, they obviously didn't bring it today. I thought that they would. I thought that if they won Friday, they were going to win today. It didn't pan out. And they're big boys. They do have leadership in the room. Hopefully the leadership and the coaching staff can turn it around. I mean, look, it's been an up and down series. It's been tight. I said that earlier in the show. And look, I don't think you count these guys. The odds are heavily against them. Winning 3 in a row against this Carolina team is going to be tough. They earned their right to win the Metro Division. There's no question about it. But as Chris has already said, he thinks they can pull it out on Tuesday. I think they have the chance too. They're in a bad spot. Let's see how it goes.
You mentioned Anders Lee. I also saw a lot of heat from the fan base on Lee on the overtime goal. Your position on that, Sean Cuthbert?
Yeah, he definitely could have put a little more effort into that play. It looked like he was, I don't want to say dogged, and maybe he was tired. It was at the end of the shift. I didn't look at the ice time or the shift length, or maybe he kind of just got caught sleeping on the play. But he definitely could have made a better effort to get into it. And look, that was just like I said in a tweet after the game that a lot of Murphy's Law happened after that game.
Yeah.
Whether it's the officiating,
that goal,
the Aho goal against, and I mean, just anything that could have went wrong that game. And to have all of that sandwiched at the end there with the missed high stick, Mayfield going down looking for a call. He gets cut on the play. Lee's slow to get back. It ends up being this mini 2-on-1, and they end up scoring on it. I mean, it was just like the perfect storm of awful. And, yeah, Lee's effort on the play didn't help any. Yeah. And, I mean, that's a bigger discussion for another day as far as, how this, what this is going to look like going forward as far as his remaining years as a New York Islander and how he's been performing in this playoff series. But, yeah, that was a rough little play for him for sure.
Okay. What else is brewing?
All right, next question is from Mitch Madness 4. Do you think the team missed Oliver Wahlstrom during these times? Could Wahlstrom have helped the Islanders more against Carolina?
That's an interesting question because the guy who's pretty much filled his spot has been Pierre Engvall, and I think he's been great. ever since he's come over.
What about in the playoff series?
You know what? I thought he's actually acclimated himself pretty. I think he's played pretty well.
Okay.
He's complimentary to Nelson and Palmieri on that line. Palmieri's been great. Obviously, one of his goals coming on the power play. But I have no complaints about Engvall's game. I think he's been playing well. I mean, look, you want to see some more numbers out of a lot of guys because the games that this team has lost, they haven't put up a lot of goals except for the 4-3 overtime game, right? But I don't mind Engvall's game to get back to Oliver Wahlstrom. I have no idea where he would have been.
You don't know,
because
right?
that's a name that we haven't heard in ages, right? Like, I mean, I kind of forgot about the dude for a little while.
Yeah.
And, you wonder, where he would be right now as far as how his season would have progressed and what kind of player he would have been going into this playoff series. Because the truth is, there's still a lot of story to be written on this guy. I don't know what kind of player he's going to be yet for the New York Islanders.
No,
he hasn't arrived yet.
It's a great question, and it'll always be interesting to follow his career and see where it goes. And let's also, and I know this wasn't like the point of the question, but let's also not lose sight of the fact that the Canes are without Svechnikov. And the Canes are missing in Teravainen.
And Max Pacioretty.
Yeah. And so, what would this series look like if not for them? And again, that's a separate thing than the question about Oliver. But for perspective, this is a 7th place Islanders team, and they're playing the Canes that are, Pacioretty's kind of, you put that one to the side a little bit, right? Because he was a steal, and then he sadly didn't last long his season this year. But certainly Svechnikov is a big. If they have Svechnikov, I'm not sure so many people are picking the Islanders to win this series.
Yeah, and ultimately, I don't think Oliver Wahlstrom is the difference between a 3-1 series
Still
or a
not
2-2 series or what have you.
He hasn't shown enough yet.
What do you got?
Joey Pickles 30 asks, or rather states in the beginning, the Isles do not have much cap space or wiggle room of dollars coming off the books next year.
Comments brewing.
Comments brewing, especially considering the possibility of re-signing our UFAs. With likely bringing back the same team, do you think the only way they can shake things up is a coaching change?
I just wish we would talk about this when the series was over. When the Islanders
are out. He's talking about
next year. I understand.
Talking about next year.
I'm happy to field the questions.
There's not going to be much change.
But
hey, late in the regular season, we talked about this, that there will be time for that. And of course, we take the bait, and we're passionate about it, too, and we talk about these things. But I will say, with complete respect to Mr. Pickles for asking that question, like, if you think about it, if there's a way to copy and paste it, maybe let's put it aside, and whether that be a Sunday or 6 from now, we can address those kind of things now.
Yeah, I don't even know how to answer that question because this, we got to see when the Islander season ends. It might end Tuesday. It might end in June. Let's wait and find out, and we will definitely talk about that. Ed,
Trottier19 asks, do you agree hockey will always be the 4th or 5th most popular sport because the refereeing sucks? It's like WWF this series. Even Parise said, sometimes you have to beat the refs too.
See, that question took a turn in that I just thought it was going to be a general one about the sport itself.
Right.
But the question is not even implying, it's saying that it is
the officiating
the 4th
would be the
or
reason,
5th
which I don't.
Because of the officiating, and I wouldn't say that's the reason for it being. So I guess what I would say is that I don't agree. That my answer to that question as it's written is no.
It may not help. But I don't think the officiating is the reason why it's the 4th or 5th most popular sport. So, but as far as I'm concerned, no other sports exist.
In the NBA, the officiating at times just drags the game down into nothing and makes it unwatchable, and yet it's the 1st or 2nd most popular. So
you even look at baseball,
football. Great
umpire calls is just based on where their strike zone is. You
don't even need umpires. Bring the robots out. You don't need the umpires anymore.
Maybe I'm very
we're better.
They're just dressing now. You don't need it. I mean, we see it on the screens when you watch the game. They show you the box. They show where the ball goes. You don't need those guys anymore.
I find NFL games unwatchable, and I know I'm very much in the minority because TV ratings are incredible, but I put on the games, and once they go to the replays, and I can't. I have a hard time watching it.
I'm with you. Ed, anything else?
Yeah, and Zeb asks, has anyone seen our $8 million center that we traded for to score goals?
There's the Bo Horvat question.
Barzy is back.
Go to minute 47
so what excuses
of the
do we
show.
have for him not scoring goals?
It's just not happening for him. He's trying his best.
I'd say we got time for one more from somebody else that isn't about a topic we've talked seriously about that we haven't talked about before. We got to remember he does ask these questions are sent in, and then we talked about we touched on that.
Oh, that was about Barzal.
Oh,
we also
no,
talked
he
about-
said the guy that we traded for. He said Bo Horvath.
He said the $8 million.
Yeah, the $8 million guy.
Yeah, and then Barzy is back, so what excuses for him not scoring goals?
There is none. He's not getting it done. That's the bottom line.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he just needs to get out there and score. What else can you say?
Our last question before Game 5
Well,
is
last question. I got a simple one. Matty Lou 82. Keys to winning in Carolina.
Okay.
Go ahead, Sean.
Well, I said it at the top of the show. Stay out of the box. You know that they're going to call everything. They have been, and it hasn't been going their way. So be disciplined. Don't take stupid penalties. Plays like Matt Martin today. Just don't give the refs a reason to blow the whistle on you because you've been paying for it all series. And look, just play through the game. I mean, look, if you can draw some penalties, fine. Even if they don't score, and I don't know if I emphasized this before, but even if the Islanders aren't successful in the power play, that's still a couple of minutes where Carolina's killing, and it's screwing up their rotation as far as their matchups, as far as the guys that they're getting out there, ice time and whatnot. It's keeping their scores off of the ice, even if the Islanders aren't scoring on the power play, right? Draw your penalties when you can. But Sorokin's key number one. He's got to show up and be Ilya Sorokin on Tuesday. Absolutely. They're not going to have the changes. The Canes are going to have their matchups. And yeah, listen, the big guys got to show up. Like, let's see a game out of Bo Horvath, Matt Barzal, and just they got to drive the play. Keep matching Canes 5-on-5. In fact, they've been the better team 5-on-5 this series. I mean, they've really lost this game in the special teams, like I've been saying. So just keep driving play 5-on-5. Get a couple of your big names to score some goals and stay out of the damn box.
Yeah, the only one I would add to that would be to survive or persevere through the first 15 minutes of game action.
Right.
I think the Canes with that crowd are just going to be completely over caffeinated, and like we talked about with Peter, and he said it too. It's like, oh, you think you had a good game plan, and next thing you know, you're being outshot 15-3 or something like that. I think there's a good chance that could happen. And it doesn't mean the Canes are going to be winning. It's a good chance it could be 0-0. I think with kind of, the pressure's on the Canes now to put this away in front of their home crowd on Tuesday. I think if they could just find a way to ward off those first 15 minutes and not go down 2-0, 15 minutes into the game, I actually think the Islanders have a pretty good chance of winning on Tuesday.
There you have it. So that'll do it for Questions Brewing. I want to thank everybody for participating, hanging out with us in the chat,
Great stuff, people.
and getting through a tough day in the Islander country here with the tough loss to the Canes. But they got another one on Tuesday. Hopefully they can pull that one out, and then we'll see what happens on Friday. We'll see what happens from there. Either way, Hockey Night in New York will be back to cover whatever ends up happening from here until then. So, Ed, you can cue the exit music. So, want to send a huge thanks to Peter Laviolette for joining us tonight. Outstanding stuff. Really, really appreciate him giving us some time tonight. And, of course, a big thanks to you guys for tuning in here at twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY and your favorite podcast providers. And I want to send a huge thanks out to our sponsors, starting with Blue Line Deli and Bagels, located at 719 West Jericho Turnpike in Huntington. Check them out at BlueLineDeli.com. And a huge thanks to Lost Farmer Brewing Company, located at 63A 2nd Street in Mineola. Check them out at LostFarmerBrewing.com. And, of course, a big thanks to Main Street Board Game Cafe, located at 307 Main Street in Huntington Village. Check them out at MainSTBoardGameCafe.com. And remember, folks, if you like what's going on here at Hockey Night New York, rate, review, subscribe, tell your friends, spread the word. Let everybody know that Hockey Night New York is the place to go for your New York Islanders podcast coverage. Chris Botta, Fred and Jay, my name is Sean Cuthbert. We've been Hockey Night New York. Have a great rest of your night. Watch out for the bobbleheads.